In today's show, we continue our player reviews, looking at Damian Lillard. Time to check your watch. How long has Dame's prime got left? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. It's coming at you every single weekday, Monday through Friday, free on all platforms, including YouTube. So why don't you make it your first listen? Like I said, it's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're continuing our player review series. We've run through 9 other folks who were on the roster at the beginning of the year, looking back at what they did in the 22-23 season, reviewing our best and worst case scenarios from way back in training camp, and then closing the show with a look ahead. The last one in our series before we turn to some guys who were acquired at mid-season later this week and into next week is Damian Lamont Ollie Lillard Sr. That's the father of Damian Jr., one of your favorite preschoolers here in the greater Portland area. Very popular at Westland preschools. Damian Lillard, we're going to talk about him today. You've probably heard of him. He's an important part of this whole enterprise, said Locked On Blazers and the Portland Trailblazers in general. So what we do in these things is we look, like I said, we were going to review that 22-23 production, revisit the best and worst case scenarios, and then look ahead. And I think what's next for Dame is the most interesting. So we'll close with that, but let's look backward a little bit to look ahead, because Dame is just coming off the best year of his career, statistically speaking. He averaged a career best 32.2 points per game to go with 4.8 boards, 7.3 assists, appeared in 58 games, 36.3 minutes in those games. Shot 46.3% from the field, 37.1% from three, 91% from the free throw line, 91.4% if you're scoring at home. He shot a career best on two-pointers, 57.4% on two-pointers is part of the reason that he had the best statistical season of his career. He had never been better than 52% on twos. Never better than 52% on twos. 57.4%. That's a massive jump. It's a 10% increase in efficiency on twos at age 32. A wild season. Career best finishing season at the rim. According to Cleaning the Glass, Damian Lillard shot 63% at the rim. Just as good as he's ever been there. He is first in offensive estimated plus minus. He's first in offensive LeBron. He's from B-Ball Index. He's second in offensive Raptor rating from 538. The alphabet soup of advanced numbers suggests that Damian Lillard was, if not the best offensive player in the league, the second best offensive player in the league behind Nikola Jokic. He had 15 40-point games. He had 15 40-point games, 3 games when he scored above 50, including a 60-pointer at Utah, 60 points, 8 boards, 7 assists, flirting with a 60-point triple-double, 6, 8, and 7 against Utah on January 25th. A month later, against Houston, at home, very bad Rockets team. Blazers needed a win because they were still clinging to the hopes they were going to make the play-in. Dame goes for 71 points, franchise record, a career record. Tying the most points with Donovan Mitchell scored in a season, 10 shy of the sort of Kobe Bryant non-wilt record that stands. 71.6 boards, 6 assists, 71, 6, and 6 in 40 minutes against the Houston Rockets. He was a monster, but he didn't start out as a monster. In fact, he was missing time early. He missed 5 of the first 12 games with a calf injury, and then he missed another 7 straight in late November and into December with that same calf injury. Just couldn't get right. Coming off a summer. He'd actually had it in January, but he had a whole off season, an extended off season, because he played very, very few games, basically half the season last year. But he had core surgery. Saying, okay, I finally am right. And then he comes into the season, just has a calf injury that's lingering. In fact, he missed 12 of the first 23 games. By December 23rd, he'd played in less than half of the Blazers games. And from that point until the Blazers shut him down in an effort to lose and draft Victor Wembanyama, he missed 2 games. One of them was post All-Star break where they held him out because of a blizzard. They had a weird travel day where they had a travel day of the game. They had spent, 8 hours on the plane before and the day before and got home and whatever, and they held him out. And it was clear at the time that this was a team that was not particularly interested in winning because they didn't push Dame. And maybe you can say, oh, there's like some health reasons that I'm sure there are, the people smarter than me to understand. But to me, it read at the time as holding him out on purpose. It was the beginning of the end of them being a competitive basketball team. The only other game Dame missed was against New Orleans a little bit later, about 10 days later, in which he was held out with a calf injury. It's later reported by Chris Haynes that that Damian Lillard was urged to sit out that game. So, up through December 3rd, his health was kind of in question. Then after that, basically only held out when the team made him, played every game from December 3rd that he could, and from December 3rd until the end of the season. And then the last 10 games of the season, the Blazers, they rekindled his calf injury. They said he still has a calf injury, even though Dame had openly acknowledged that at some point he was going to start sitting out games. But the Blazers, because they don't want to get in trouble, they said they called it an injury and he was ruled out for the final 10 games. Did not play after March 22nd. But he had been red hot leading up to that. In fact, in his final game of the year, he had 30.7 boards and 12 assists in a win at Utah. He was too good to play. They had to get them the heck up out of there. And in February, leading up to that March where they had to sit him down, he only played the first 3 weeks of March. But in February, in 10 games in February, Damian Lillard averaged 38.5 points, 5.7 boards, and 7 assists on 49.6, 41, 96 splits. That's if you round up, 50, 40, 95, averaging 38 a game with 7 assists in 10 February games. He was as good as he's ever been. I mean, the special part about this season is not that Damian Lillard was good, right? Because I expected him to be good. In fact, you're going to revisit Michael from the past in the second segment, and you'll hear my expectations for him. I thought Dame was going to be good, right? I thought Dame was going to be good. He was great. He was, he's been pretty consistently over the last little bit, except for not this season, but the season prior when he had the core injury. He's been one of the 5 best offensive players in the league. He was right back at that level again. And he's probably better, statistically, at least on offense, probably better than he's ever been. And my eyeball test suggested this was one of his most competitive defensive seasons. Credit to Chauncey Billups. I think he coaxed one of the most competitive defensive seasons out of Dame that he's had. Dame's still a below average defender. Some nights straight up bad. But I think this was more consistently competitive, more consistently physical than we've seen him be on defense. Still, again, to be clear, a below average defender, and even a below average defender probably at his position at point guard. But he played better defense than he has in the past, and he had the best offensive season maybe of his career, probably of his career. He was, by the alphabet soup metrics, straight up maybe the best offensive player in the sport this year. He was great. And it makes me think, which is kind of the sort of thesis of this whole episode, is how many more he's got in him? How many more you got in you? He was so good this year. How many more of these can we expect from Damian Lillard? Let's talk about that to close the show, but let's look backward to look forward. I want to revisit my predictions from preseason in the second segment to remind you and kind of remind myself what we thought Dame might be, figure out where he landed on the best and worst case scenarios. That's what we'll do in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you about PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy. I play PrizePicks on my phone, but you can play it on PrizePicks.com as well. How it works is you pick between 2 and 6 players on every entry. It can be whatever sport you want: basketball, football, hockey, baseball. I play the NBA because that's what I'm most comfortable with. You pick 2 and 6 players, and PrizePicks sets projections. You pick above or below those projected statistical lines. So it's things like points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. It's just you versus the lines that PrizePicks sets. No field, no sharks, no nothing. Just you versus the numbers, and when you win, you get paid quick and easy with fast and safe withdrawals. And right now, go to PrizePicks.com or download the app, and when you do, for first-time users, use the promo code LOCKEDON and get a 100% deposit match up to $100. That means you put in $100, give you $100. Put in $50, they give you $50. So don't wait. Go take advantage today. That's PrizePicks.com or download the app wherever you get mobile apps. Make sure when you do, you use that promo code LOCKEDON. All right. Let's keep it rolling talking about Damian Lillard. He was really good this year. Like I said, probably the best he's ever been on offense, and arguably the best season just straight up of his career in year 11. In age 32, just a season that few could have seen coming, which I want to revisit my predictions from the past to find out kind of what I thought I saw coming. I think outside of Portland, it's important to remember that outside of this particular market we're in, and this is like the beauty of YouTube and this podcast stretches much further than Portland's boundaries, and I appreciate those of you listening from all over the world. But outside of Portland, the perception was like, is Dame ever going to be himself again? Is he ever going to be healthy? He's had all this trouble. Inside this city, inside the media market, my faith, and particularly the faith of my colleagues within the market, were like, this dude's going to be fine. I'm not worried about him. And I think that's an important thing to remember. Let's revisit Michael from the past to hear those predictions, and then we'll look back to look forward. Take it away, Michael from the past. Damian Lillard, as it is for star players, has an extremely, let me say that again, extremely narrow window of what best and worst case scenario looks like. So what's the best case scenario for Damian Lillard? So he averages 29 and 8, shoots 40% from 3, and he's one of the best 5 offensive players in the league. The best case scenario is that he's a borderline MVP candidate, a shoe-in all-star, and guides the Blazers to an easy top 5 offense while sprinkling in a little more off-ball terror than we've seen him in the past. The best case scenario is that Damian Lillard is the force you remember from the last time he was fully healthy. The best case scenario is that Damian Lillard at age 32 isn't that much different from Damian Lillard at age 30. The best case scenario is this guy who has been that good, still that same guy. The best case scenario is Dame, and we don't really talk much about him. We just say, wow. Couple wows in there, a couple okays in there, and a couple magic late game moments. The best case scenario from Damian Lillard is that he's the Damian Lillard that you have come to expect a statue for. Like I said, the worst case scenario is so dang narrow. What's the worst? So what does the worst case look like? It's the Dame averages 26 and 6, shoots 34% from 3, and is simply one of the 15 best offensive players in the league. The worst case scenario is that Lillard doesn't necessarily jive with the more off-ball role that Chauncey Billups' offense has presented him this season, and that the offense sputters from top 5 to something like 14th. The worst case scenario is that Damian Lillard is not the Dame you remember, but simply a very good basketball player. The worst case scenario is that Damian Lillard is not in the MVP discussion, but more like a borderline all-star for a team that is not as good as they once were. The worst case scenario for Damian Lillard is that he just succumbs a little bit to aging and a year off, and it takes him a while to get going. And by the time he finds his rhythm, the Blazers are scrambling to get back into the hunt. The worst case scenario for Damian Lillard is a type of season most players work all their life for. But that is the sort of the subtlety, the magic, the specialness of what makes great players great. Is that the best case scenario is 29 and 8, and the worst case scenario is 26 and 6. Thank you, Michael from the past. I set those parameters pretty narrow for Dame on purpose because I was a big believer in him being special, and the difference was going to be, is he one of the best 5 offensive players in the league, or is he a little bit worse, and he still outperformed that. I added a 29 and 8 for his best case scenario, and he finished with 32 and 7 dimes. Even outperformed my best case scenario, the only person in this projections to outperform my best case scenario. Some people hit it, but I think Dame pretty clearly passed up that best case scenario. Still one of the best 5 offensive players in the league, the most productive offensive season of his career. The efficiency was there, the production was there. His shot chart is a nerd's dream. He only makes layups and deep 3-pointers, and he took it to a new extreme in terms of volume of threes and aggressiveness getting to the rim. He got to the free throw line at a career high rate, or particularly early in the season, kind of ended up leveling out, but he was spectacular. I mean, I think I might have said this throughout the year on the podcast, but I think this was the first season of Dame's career that he was truly underrated. I think most part he has branded himself as underrated and been properly rated as very good. Like he was the freaking unanimous rookie of the year. Like he was like he was picked, what, sixth in the NBA draft, was unanimous rookie of the year. Like everyone knew he was good, and then they treat him as such. And then he's like, underrated. He did like miss some all-star teams that maybe he should have made early in his career. So I get the branding, but like, for the most part, Damian Lillard has been respected as a very good basketball player. I think this was the first time all season long, or all his career in a decade, where he's truly underrated. I think fans, particularly Blazer fans, like I'm talking specifically like here, Blazer fans kind of fall into two categories, where they overrate Dame and think that this will last forever, or they underrate Dame and they say like, Shaedon Sharpe could do this. and to that I say, wouldn't that be awesome, right? Like, it would be really special if Anthony Simons or Damian or Shaedon Sharpe or literally anyone in the league ever got to this level where you're like the best offensive player in the NBA and you sustain that for multiple seasons. Or at least you're one of the 5 best offensive players in the NBA for like 5 consecutive years. But Dame is at a level that few touch. And I think that's why he's become underrated. He's just really, really special. But I also think that Father Time, Mother Gaia are undefeated in this space. At some point, you stop being able to do it. Damian Lillard is going to turn 33 in July. He's coming off the best statistical season of his career. He was battling some injury stuff for the first quarter of the season. Then he was incredibly healthy and kicked everybody's butt. How long can he keep doing this? He exceeded my own admittedly high expectations heading into the season. Michael from the past thought Damian Lillard was going to be a star, and Damian Lillard was even better than that. He was even better. And I think the question, now that we've looked back to look forward, is an unknowable one, but one worth pondering. How many of these you got left? Join me in the third segment. We will look ahead with what's next with Damian Lillard. Come on, won't you? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listening to Locked On Blazers. Thanks for making the show your first listen. Make sure you listen tomorrow. We're continuing a Damian Lillard theme this week. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the big trade. And not the one that acquires Dame a second star, but what would a trade look like if the Blazers were to deal Damian Lillard? I think there is a portion of the fan base that is curious about what that might look like. For a variety of reasons. One, there's a lot of people that like to say, I have an unpopular opinion that the Blazers should rebuild. That seems to be like half the fan base, y'all. A lot of people think that. And I think it's a totally fair reason, but I want to tease out that reason. I want to talk about Dame trades. I want to spend a whole episode discussing that big thing, the sort of cloud that's hanging over this podcast. I've delayed it a lot. It's time to face it head on. That's what we'll do in tomorrow's show. Make this show your first listen so you can get fun Damian Lillard content, fun sort of thoughtful Blazers content is what we try to do here. Get that every day wherever you're listening to the show. We've looked back. Now let's look forward. The question for me is, how long can Dame play at this level? Because Damian Lillard has made it clear. He's run out of patience. At his exit interview, he made it clear that if the Blazers' plan is to build something slowly with patience, and hey, we're going to build to the next step, gradual incremental improvement. He is not with that plan. He said, and I quote, "That route is not my route." He doesn't want to be involved in patience. He's taken 2 full years, a surgery year and then this year, of patience, being in the lottery, having one of the 6th and then 5 worst records in the league, being truly bad, trying to lose on purpose for the end of the season. They're 6-40 after the All-Star breaks, the last 2 seasons. They've lost on purpose. It's been aggressive. It's probably been the right thing to do, but Damian Lillard is tired of that. He wants them to be aggressive in trying to upgrade the roster, and he admitted as such at his ex-interview that having a good plan, being on board with Joe Cronin, being on board with the plan, Chauncey Billups being on board with the plan, all 3 of them kind of seeing this vision the same way, making, trying to pry stars out of other situations around the league, your friends you've made across the league, all of those things aligning, and a trade getting done, with, without, sort of that works for both sides and allows the Blazers to get where they want to go without gutting the rest of the back half of the roster. It's like Dame has admitted it's hard to do that. But he's also stated pretty cleanly that if they're not able to sort of make that trade, which is obviously going to have to be around the draft, the Blazers don't have, the free agency is not where that happens. It's going to be involved next week's, not this week, but the following week's draft lottery odds, where they end up in the draft lottery. If they don't end up with the Victor Wembanyama number 1 overall pick, they're probably going to try to package that pick. They are going to attempt to package that pick and that other's probably going to be Anthony Simons to land a star, right? They're going to try to land a star. If they don't do that around the draft, it's going to lead into some challenges, and it might lead into a conversation where Dame says, well, he couldn't get it done. It's time. We're going to talk about it's time in tomorrow's show, but right now I want to talk about the sort of what the calculation is. And if you do land this hypothetical star trade, for hypothetical star, let's use the name, a fill-in name here. We'll call them this person, and I'm just going to make a name up, any two names in the world. We're going to call this person Mikal Bridges. You know what? That might be too on the nose. Let's call this person Pascal Siakam. They acquire this person who, I don't know, it's just two random names, any two random names. They acquire Pascal Siakam. What the calculation is that Damian Lillard can play at this level for 2 more seasons, 3 more seasons. I think Damian Lillard's game is going to age pretty well. I think Dame's game can age pretty well. He's a great shooter. He's the greatest distance shooter the league has ever seen. No one has shot from further away more accurately, more consistently. The volume and the accuracy from as deep as Dame shoots, there's been nobody like it in the league. Obviously, he would have just gotten benched for doing that for a lot of the league. Dame's being prolific and efficient from that range, allowed other players across the league and for the future of the league to be I'm going to shoot it from 32 feet, and you can't get mad because this breaks the geometry of the defense. I think Dame's game can age well. This year he looked fast getting to the rim, and that was what really set him apart, was that he had that burst to get all the way to the paint. Didn't dunk very much, had 10 dunks all year long. And then the first one came in the second half of the season. Did not dunk until 2023. 0 dunks in 2022. 0 for the full calendar year of 2022. He might have dunked in the Olympics, but I doubt it. That was the previous year. 0 dunks for 2022. Straight up, Damian Lillard did not dunk in the year 2022 on an NBA basketball court. But he was getting to the rim and finishing at a career best level. He was incredibly efficient on twos, and he continued to be a high volume, above average shooter from 3. The league average was right around 36% from 3. Dame shooting 11 a game, shooting 37% from 3, from deep, from way the heck out there. It's a special player with a special gift that I think can age well. I think it is fair to guess, just total speculation here, that Dame has 2 more seasons at something like this level. Now, we just had the best season of his career, so assuming that he's he'll just, the ladder keeps going up. Seems silly, but if you, it's just, not realistic. But if you assume that, the plateau is very flat, right, and that the decline is, he declines 1.5% and then 1.5%, he's still extremely good, right? Still extremely good. But he averages, 32, I'm looking at my notes, 32 and 7 assists and 5 rebounds. It's okay, 29, 4.5, and 7 assists. Still a freaking great season, right? He's still be all NBA type performer. I think he can do that for a couple more years. What is the real truth about aging in the league is not that you fall off a cliff. At some point you do, right? And some players do faster than others, but I think Dame takes care of himself, pretty seriously, is in sort of the physical shape he maintains, and then the work he's consistently put in, and his skill set seems to age well. But the real truth about players getting older in the league is not that they can't touch the highest heights. It's that they can't touch it for that long. It's that the peak that they were able to sustain for 20, 40, 65 games, they can now hit it twice a week in the 4 times you play, and then once a week in the 4 times you play. And there's still those special nights where they look incredibly good, but the ability to do it all of the time diminishes. And that would be my concern for Dame, is that not that he drops off a cliff. I expect him to be an all-NBA type player next year. I expect him to be right on that cusp in the following season when he'll be 34. It's just at that age, 35, 36, at some point, you're going to be less. And then you see a guy like Chris Paul, who's 37, ton of miles and all that, and it's Father Time caught up to Chris Paul. He's one of the great shooters. Chris Paul is straight up one of the best shooters in the history of the league. He just takes mid-rangers, but he's really one of the best touch guys in the history of the league. He's excellent. And eventually it caught up with him. It caught up with him, and he looks old now. It happens. LeBron is a weird one to use, but like LeBron can tap into being the best player in the world. He just can't do it every night. And he can't do it for longer stretches, but he can still tap into being the best player in the world. I think Steph Curry is a reasonable one for Dame. Well, Steph's like wild though, right? He has extended, he was the best player. He was a finals MVP at 34 and the best player on the court. I think it's reasonable to think Dame's got 2 more years at this level. And so if you're making the trade this summer, you are factoring in a short timeline. And that's why Dame has been clear that he doesn't want to build, because he too knows his NBA mortality is real. The timeline is short. So if you're going for it, and if the Blazers are really going to go for it, part of me thinks that you just have to know that you have 2 seasons. You don't have 3 and 4 and 5. Because if you are doing that, if you're hedging and you're saying, okay, well, we'll get there. While I think that might be more responsible, like, and I really do, I think it might be a more responsible way to treat a team, to like build with a small market. But if you are like really thinking, listen, the thing that you need to win a championship is one of the 10 best players in the NBA. If you think you have that on your roster, wasting another season being decent and not going all in, it might just be foolish, right? Like, that's why I think and I've said this in the pod before, you got to pick a lane. If you go part of the way and you say, okay, well, we don't want to mortgage all of our future. We can't push all of those things in. And you say, okay, well, what does Dame and Pascal Siakam and Jeremy Grant look like? It's pretty good. It worked out pretty good. But we still need more. It seems to me if you lean one way, you got to lean all the way in and fall into that path face first. And if you lean the other way, you got to fall into that path face first. You cannot straddle the line and try to maintain your balance. Dame has been clear, and if you kind of just think about it on this timeline I'm laying out, patience might not be rewarded like that, because in 2 years, it's like the way this would work in like a perfect world is that Shaedon Sharpe at age 22 is like ready to be one of the top 10 players in the league. And I think that is just unfair to ask. Even the best 22-year-olds in the game. Like, Anthony Edwards is going to be a star in this league. He wasn't one of the 10 best players in the league this year. Luka Doncic is like on the sort of like all-timer first ballot Hall of Fame track. Those are the names that are kind of on that list. I think it's too much pressure to put on youngsters, and it's unrealistic. It's like he might end up being a freaking star, but there is something short of one of the 10 best players in the league. So part of me, like, and I'll talk about this tomorrow's show. I'm pushing tomorrow's show because I want you to come back and listen to it, because I want to talk about this Dame trade more often. It's like, when I'm thinking about Dame's prime, I think it is a 2-year window of being excellent and maybe a 4-year window of being very good. But if you don't go for it in this 2-year window, part of me thinks you might as well pull the ripcord and not go for it at all. If you're not going to go all in and be hyper aggressive, you might as well not go, period. That's how I earnestly and honestly feel. Because I think Damian Lillard's prime is going to extend, but I don't think it extends forever. And I think the Blazers need to face that fact very earnestly this summer and decide which lane they're going to go in, and then put the freaking pedal to the metal and cruise down that lane as fast as you can and as aggressively as you can, because making a decision is the most sort of responsible thing you can do, whether you're being irresponsible with your future or you are really banking on the future and getting rid of a franchise icon. Tomorrow's show, we're going to talk Dame trade stuff. This was a review, and we're kind of looking ahead to what's next with Dame. That's what I think's next. Come back, listen tomorrow. We'll talk all about the trade and the like hypothetical world in which they trade Dame. We will visit that hypothetical in depth for about 30 minutes right here, wherever you're listening, or on YouTube if you're watching. I appreciate you listening. Tell your friends about this podcast. I will talk to you soon.